And I might have to be darting around and letting people in from the waiting room. But let's come into standing. And obviously Sheila was saying that she wasn't feeling that great just being still in standing. And so I'd like you to take a moment just to look at your feet and settle your feet on the floor. I mean, you could always have socks on. I'm hoping it's going to be a little bit warmer today. So looking at your feet, settling your feet on the floor. And then you could just do a little bit of swaying from side to side. Yeah, and Sheila, if your back is feeling achy already, then do a bit of bending your knees and a bit of that wiggling your pelvis. So, yeah. Or just bending your knees and that sort of dropping your tailbone. And it's the rest of you, just that sense of how do you feel? We are going to start to move a little bit more, but just how do you feel in standing? And if it does feel a bit, not so comfortable, you can do any little movements you feel drawn to. Hi Al, we're just starting in standing. And then we're going to do this loose swinging twist. So starting to swing your arms from side to side, letting your hands, I'm just realizing that I'm not spotlit, sorry. Letting your arms swing from side to side. And yeah, just having a sense of, I think particularly, we're focusing today on quite a lot of twisting, rotation movements. So having a sense of, I think particularly how the shoulders feel, how your arms feel. And at this sort of movement through the upper body of the ribs and the spine, how does that all feel? Okay, so a couple more times. And so part of what we're doing is we're noticing how these movements feel, and we're going to do some things on our backs, and then we'll come back to them and see if anything's changed. So settle down. And again, Sheila, if you need to sort of move around, that's fine, because we're coming to swinging our arms now. And that's it. So just swinging the arms, so the arms cross in front of you. And then from swinging your arms, you're going to give yourself a hug with one arm on top. So I quite like to, at the moment, sort of bring my hands onto like the ball of my shoulder. You can have your hands on your ribs, but just that sort of, if the hands are hanging off the shoulders, sometimes it can be a bit more relaxing for the arms. And then when you're here, there's a couple of things you can do. You can do a little twisting movement where you're trying to move just from the waist up, although I'm rather unsuccessful about this. So just turning my shoulders from side to side. And the other one, Sheila, which you might find more helpful, is that sort of bending your knees and then just looking down a bit so your upper back is rounding. So it's almost like the very beginning of going towards a forward bend. And you could come in and out of that a couple of times. And I'm just going to let Donna in. And then if you just look at your arms, because I want us to do the other side, so you could then just look at your arms, see which is on top, release your arms, have a little shake out of your legs. And again, Sheila, so you're not staying too fixed in standing. Hi, Donna. And then come back to swinging your arms, crossing your arms in front of your body. Good. And from swinging your arms, you again can swing them in to give yourself a hug with the other arm on top. And then again, it's up to you whether you want your hands on your shoulders or on your rib cage, and whether you want to do little twisting movements. So that was just that sort of a little bit of turning from side to side. I was thinking that we're trying to keep the pelvis pointing forwards. It doesn't matter too much. Or the little movement where you're bending your knees a bit, looking down, letting your upper back start to round. So it's the very beginning of a forward bend. And in fact, what we're going to be doing from here is moving on into a forward bend. So you could start from there with your arms crossed and then just release your arms. Bring your elbows onto your thighs if you like, let your head go. And then you could release your arms all the way to the ground, if your lower back's fine. So Sheila, you might need your elbows on your thighs, I'm not sure. And just have a couple of breaths in your forward bend. And this, again, at this point, it's very much sort of explorative. How does our body feel today? Letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave us. Good. that side. So yes, and from your forward bend, when you've had a few breaths in your forward bend, sorry, I was just checking the laptop, then you can roll back up into standing or walk your hands back up the fronts of your legs. And then just one last thing before we come down out of standing is to come back to our loose, easy, swinging twist. And I was just thinking actually then about how I've been doing a lot of these things because I think I've had really stiff shoulders over the last sort of few weeks. I don't know why, but they are actually feeling better. So I don't know if that's down to doing all of these things or just, yeah, who knows. All of these things we feel in our body are, you know, related to so many other things in our lives. So a few more times, letting our arms swing to the right and to the left. Good. And then what we'll do is we'll let this go. We'll come to the back of our mats and we'll come to touch our hands together in prayer pose. So we're going to move down in a moment. We're going to sort of swing our arms up and then move down through a forward bend and dog pose. But just come to the back of your mat. Settle your feet on the floor, bring the palms of your hands together, let a breath come in as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Feel long and tall for a moment, and then as you exhale, gather your elbows in, start to roll down, bending the knees. Come into a forward bend, and again, just maybe a couple of breaths in your forward bend, seeing how this second forward bend feels. And elbows could be on the thighs, you could let your arms go and try and let your head hang. And then from your forward bend, you're going to be walking your hands forwards into dog pose. And once you arrive in dog pose, just really, again, use it as this opportunity to check in with your bodies. So what do you feel? I think also, you know, particularly the shoulders, we start to experience our shoulders in a different way once we're putting weight through our arms in dog. So particularly, how do we feel across the back of the shoulders? We also notice the back of our legs, perhaps our lower back. You can, you know, have a couple of big sighing breaths. And whenever you want to, from dog, come down onto hands and knees. And we're going to settle on hands and knees, and we're going to do some cat movements and a bit of tail wagging. So these, again, I think are, you know, we've been doing them quite a lot in recent weeks. We're so good for releasing tension. So coming into your cat movements, and you know, just how does cat feel today? How does it feel when you round your back to the ceiling? How does it feel when you dip your spine down to the floor? Rounding and dipping. And allowing your breath to flow as freely as possible through you. So breathing through your nose unless you've got a cold or hay fever. And just allowing that sort of calm, even flow of your breath. We can move on to a little bit of tail wagging. So sort of pausing somewhere relatively neutral with your spine, seeing how it feels to imagine you have a tail and to wag your tail from side to side. And if you like, you could add in the lower legs. So that movement where we swing our lower legs from side to side, and that sort of wags our tail for us. So do a bit of that if you like. And so I find if I do a bit of swinging my legs from side to side, then I want to go back and just see how my tail wagging is without swinging my legs. And we're going to just take the weight off our hands and our wrists by coming into child pose for a couple of breaths. So you can round your back to the ceiling, round up into a rounded up cat, and then stay rounded to rock back into child. And of course, if you prefer to be in kneeling, that's absolutely fine. Just wherever you are, having a couple of quiet breaths and just letting the weight of your body settle down to the ground. So feel your breath come in, feel your breath leave you. We're going to come into another dog pose in a moment. So whenever you feel ready, you can come back into dog pose. So bringing your hands back onto the floor. So obviously, if you're in kneeling, if you're a child, they might already be there. So obviously when we come into a second dog pose from the ground, it's going to feel a bit different than dog from our forward bend. So we can have really big handprints on the floor. We can tuck our toes under. We can rock ourselves up and back in dog. And again, it's just that noticing, what do we feel? Does somewhere feel particularly tight? And then what can we do about that? Bending our knees, walking on the spot. Resting down through the arms more. Accessing our breathing a little bit more. So it might be that sort of, exaggerating the breath with a big sighing breath, or just focusing in on our breathing. And Sheila, it would be interesting for you to sort of notice, how does your back feel in something like dog? And do you need to move a bit more to make sure it doesn't, seize up there? Yes, and that's a good thing. Adjusting the length of your dog pose, sometimes taking your hands a bit further forwards or a bit closer towards your feet could help, or you can walk the feet in and out. So from dog, we're going to fold back into child pose. And what I want you to do is, we're just going to do a little bit of this wiggling of our pelvis in a couple of different places that we did a couple of weeks ago. So we've done a bit of moving our pelvis on hands and knees in cat. If you come into child pose and just see, what's it like to wiggle, rock, or wiggle your pelvis from side to side? And sometimes I feel that I need to rest on my elbows and not so much my forehead when I'm doing this. To wiggle my pelvis. And then from child pose, you're going to slither forwards onto your belly. And you're going to do a bit of wiggling your pelvis on your belly. So when you're ready, slither forwards onto your belly. So I've got one hand on top of the other, and I'm resting my cheek, the sort of side of my head, on my top hand. I'm giving my pelvis a bit of a wiggle. And then when you've given your pelvis a bit of a wiggle on your belly, just settle down quietly for a moment and let a cycle or two of breath move through you. So see how it feels to let the breath come in, let the breath leave you, just lying quietly on your belly. And so B doesn't go to sleep, we will carry on moving. So bend your knees, take the soles of your feet towards the ceiling, and then start to tilt your feet to the right and to the left. And so this creates a similar sort of movement. That's it, around the pelvis. Good. And so Sheila, looks like that's quite nice for your lower back, but obviously if this doesn't feel nice for the lower back, don't do it. Or move your feet a bit lower towards, a bit closer towards the floor. So you can do that 2 or 3 more times. Let the feet tilt from side to side. This is just quite a sort of nice, sort of lazy, easy thing to do. And then let the legs settle back on the floor and just come to another breath or two lying on your belly. How does it feel? And maybe when we're breathing on our belly, we can feel the movement of our breath more in the back of our body. That sort of expansion of the inhalation in the back ribs. And then from lying on your belly, you're going to roll over onto your back. And just settle yourself on your back. So we're going to do some twisty movements on our back, just really releasing things. And yeah, but first of all, you're going to roll over onto your back and you're going to arrive on your back and just see, how does it feel to be lying down? And often, I think often there's that real feeling of, thank goodness, of just this sort of pleasure to be lying down. So you can just feel a cycle of breath move through you. before we start to move. So feel the breath come in, feel the breath leave you. And then you could feel the weight of your head on the floor, and start to let your head roll a little bit to the right and to the left. So easing your head from side to side. And as you let your head roll to the right and to the left, let your shoulders rest back onto the ground. Just be sort of, they can be as settled and quiet and soft as possible. And from rolling your head from side to side, find a place where you can settle the center of the back of your head on the floor. If the back of your neck still feels a bit tight, you can pick up your head in your hands and gently lengthen out the back of your neck. And then sort of place your head back on the floor. So you just do that quite gently, don't pull on your head. That's it. And then if your legs are long, bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And then you're going to start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And seeing how this feels around your pelvis, into your hip joints, perhaps into the lower back. Sheila, that's it, that's nice. Just keep the movement comfortable, keep it easy. You know, if you want to make it a larger movement, you can, but you can also keep quite sort of small with this. And then we're going to do some movements for the upper back. So we're going to alternate between this tilting of the knees and doing some movements for our upper back. So if you're comfortable with your legs long on the floor, you could lengthen your legs out, but you don't have to. You can keep them bent. Just for the next movement, try not to let your knees tilt. So lengthen the legs out if you're comfortable, and then take your arms up towards the ceiling, and you're going to make this big circle with your arms over your chest. So interlinking your fingers, imagining you're holding a beach ball on your chest. And you're then going to start to rock. So your head and your arms are going to start to rock a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. So you're rocking your weight towards the back of your right shoulder and then the back of your left shoulder. And we're starting to do this sort of massaging across our upper back between our shoulder blades. If, you know, sometimes this can feel a little bit painful, so you can just keep it small. Think about being soft through the front of your chest and relaxed in your jaw. So the more we can soften here, the more we can start to release any tension there may be in the upper back. So a couple more times, rocking from side to side. And then you can let the arms release on the floor. And just rest the arms down, let a breath come in, let a breath leave you. And then when you're ready, bending your knees, again, standing your feet on the floor. Just take a moment feeling your footprints on the ground, feeling the back of your pelvis on the ground. Then come to letting the knees tilt to the right and to the left. That's nice, lovely. Just a few times of how does it feel to come back to this movement. That's great. And then we're going to come to another movement for the upper back. So again, you could keep your knees bent, or if it's comfortable, lengthen your legs out on the floor. And you're going to take your arms up over your chest again and make a triangle with your arms this time and touch your palms together. And just like we did with the circle, you're going to start to rock your triangle to the right and to the left. Don't let your elbows bend and don't let your hands slide on each other. So again, we're looking for this feeling of rocking across the upper back. The weight rocks towards the back of our left shoulder, towards the back of our right shoulder. We're doing this sort of massaging across our upper back. That's nice, good. Good, and I do find this triangle one can sometimes be a little bit painful, but it's usually a bit better if I've done the circle before. So again, if it does feel that you're really getting into some tender, tight places, you can always do less. And when you feel you've done enough, then you bring your arms down to rest. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. Feel the length of your body on the ground. And then once more, we'll bend the knees and stand the feet on the floor and come back to tilting the knees a little bit to the right and a little bit to the left. That's nice. Good. So it's what's really nice to see. And I think actually, particularly in you, Sheila, you know, it's the movement just looks a bit smoother, this tilting of the knees as we're undoing stuff in the upper body. Now, this time, pause in the center, but keep your knees bent. So I'd just like you to, we're going to move in the upper body, but then we're going to add the knees in. So keep your knees bent, keep your feet on the floor. And you're going to cross your arms over your chest. So it's like you're giving yourself a hug. So like we did in standing at the beginning of class. And then just start to see, how does it feel to rock across your upper back with your arms in this position, with giving yourself a hug? Try not to let your knees move just yet. So it might not be a big movement. So a little bit of letting the head and the elbows rock to the right and then to the left. And don't feel that you have to go particularly far, because that may just not be possible. From side to side, okay, just a couple more times. And then you can pause in the middle and you can change the cross of your arms. So put the other arm on top. And now you're going to add your knees in as well, and that's going to make it feel a whole lot easier. So you're going to let your knees rock in the same direction as your elbows and your head. So this becomes a different sort of movement now, less of a rotation, more of this rolling from side to side across the back of our body. And again, it can be little or it can be larger. So it's up to you how big or small you make this movement. And eventually, from rocking from side to side, you're going to let yourself rock all the way onto one side and give yourself a couple of breaths. And so particularly, yeah, if you're, so like you as lying in the sun, if I have some of your tea, it's nice. But yes, if you're lying in the sun, you can have a couple of nice quiet breaths in the sun and then come back over onto hands and knees. So we're just going to do a couple of hands and knees things, and then we're going to make our way back into standing. So when you come back onto hands and knees, you can come back to some of your cat movements and some of your tail wagging. And just, you know, how do these movements feel now? We've done all these, I suppose, releasing movements on our back. So how does it feel now to come into cat? And I was teaching this last night, and I was really struck by the fact that I was not really doing the movements. I was talking you into them, but actually I feel that I've released some tension just by thinking about the movements, not even doing them particularly. So a little bit of cat, a little bit of tail wagging, and then we're going to move on into dog pose and a forward bend and back up into standing. So when you're ready, tucking your toes under, exhaling, rocking into dog. And just, yeah, how does dog pose feel now? How do your shoulders feel? How does it feel across your upper back? How does it feel through the backs of your legs and your lower back? And when you've had a few breaths in dog, you can stay, of course, as long as you like in dog, but when you've had a few breaths there, you can start to warp your hands in towards your feet. You can come into your forward bend and see how that feels. How does it feel to have all of the weight in the feet and the spine tumbling forwards, or the elbows resting on your thighs if you prefer. And then to come into standing, we'll touch the backs of the hands together and we'll roll up into standing, trailing the hands up the front of the body, straight up to the ceiling, being long and tall, letting a breath come in and then exhaling with the arms in a big circle, back down into prayer. And now we're in standing, we're not going to stay still, Sheila, don't worry. We're going to come back to the swinging twist. So come back to what we started with, swinging our arms, letting our feet move. seeing how this feels now after all the little things we did on our back. So maybe, yeah, maybe it feels different. Maybe we feel a bit sort of freer and easier. And we're going to carry on in standing with some more twisting movements. So a couple more times, swing your arms from side to side. Good. And then we'll let that go, but we'll come back to it in a slightly different foot position. So just have enough space on your mat. You don't have to be right at the back, but have enough space that you can step forwards with one foot. So have your feet a little distance apart, and then step one foot forwards, and then come to this one where we rock our weight forwards and back. I always just think, oh, this is this place where we can, yeah, this is probably quite good, Sheila, because you're in standing, but you're moving. I just always like this one in terms of feeling my feet, and all that sort of busyness in my head really does start to sort of ease out. So a couple more times, rocking forwards and back, and then settling down. So by settling down, I mean let both feet come to settle on the floor. And you can then bring your hands onto your pelvis, and maybe just a big breath or two here, and think about, I'm dropping the weight of my pelvis down through my legs into the floor. I'm trying to feel really planted from the waist down. We're going to swing our arms here now, but trying just to move from the waist up. So it's this slightly unnatural feeling of the ribs and the shoulders and the head and the arms moving, but not the pelvis and the legs. So we've got this sense of the sort of two halves of ourselves. Okay. We could then try doing those turning movements, but bring our hands onto our low ribs. So can we feel as we turn? This one feels like, oh, I'm not doing much at all. But can we feel our ribs turning? And then we could make it slightly less frustrating by having the fingertips on the shoulders. And then we probably feel a little bit more of a turn. The shoulders can move a bit more. And fingers could come onto the crown of your head. And then again, perhaps we feel that there's a bit more. So we're still not moving below the waist if possible, but we're maybe feeling a bit more movement. Okay, and then release your arms. And we're going to come into a forward bend here. So you bend your front knee, and you can fold forward so you rest your hands or your elbow on that front leg thigh, but you can also go lower. And you can come so that you rest your chest down towards that front leg. You let your head go if that feels all okay. So the back leg staying straight, the front knees bending. We're just really sort of flopping down towards the floor through our upper body and letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave us. You can come back up when you're ready by sinking down into both footprints. And so this is sort of trying to come up feeling steady. Good. And then step your foot back so your feet are side by side, and step the other foot forwards and come to a little bit of rocking your weight forwards and back. Good. That's nice. Lovely. So that, again, that process of just really allowing yourself to drop down into your feet. So perhaps in our awareness, our feet start to feel bigger because we're feeling them more. And then eventually we can settle both feet down on the floor and hands on the pelvis with the big breath or two. It's just everything here. Pelvis and legs are sinking down into the ground. And we can start to swing our arms. That's it, without moving below the waist, or with minimizing the movement below the waist. Good. Minimizing the movement below the waist, maximizing the movement above it. And you can move on to trying and just seeing how it feels if your hands are on your low ribs. That's probably where we feel the least movement, but you might feel those ribs sort of moving, rotating on top of each other. Hands on the shoulders can move a little bit more. You can see how that feels. Good. And then fingers on the crown of the head. Turning, that's it, to the right and to the left. And then whenever you're ready, we can take this into the forward bend. So we can release our arms, we can bend our front knee, We can come to lean forwards onto that bent front leg. You can stay leaning there, or you can go further so that you rest your chest, or your chest comes close to your front thigh. You let your head go, you let your arms go. And you have a few breaths there, just sort of flopping forwards through your upper body. So let the breath come in, let the breath leave you in your forward bend. You can come back up when you're ready on an exhalation. Again, that feeling of just really sinking down into the feet. Good. And come up and have a little shake out. We're going to come back to that foot position in a moment, but I just want us to do a normal forward bend. Is this right? No, actually before we want to do that, I just want us to see how it feels to do a little standing back arch. So it maybe is one hand on the pelvis. You could be taking one arm up. And how is it to look up towards the ceiling a bit and let our pelvis come forwards? Now, yes, for some of us, it's really important to try and focus, for all of us, it's important to try and feel that the tailbone is dropping. For some of us, it's harder, and maybe bending the knees helps. So as our pelvis comes forwards, our tailbone can drop. Good. You could try both arms. Sometimes taking both arms up means you have to bring your pelvis forwards. Good. Let's, from here, just come down into a normal forward bend and take that forward bend, if you like, into your weeping willow movement. So that's swinging your arms, trailing your fingers, side to side around the fronts of your feet. So imagining that your arms are the branches of a weeping willow trailing into a river. And just, yes, that's nice. That's nice. It's sort of a beautiful, it's sort of a beautiful fluid movement from side to side. And then you can pause in the center. You could just see, how does your forward bend feel now? And then exhaling, sink into your heels and roll up into standing. Good. And perhaps have a little shake out of your legs. We're going to come back into that position where we've got one foot stepped forwards. So hopefully you remember, it doesn't really matter too much, but if you can remember which foot you had stepped forwards, first of all, come back to that side. So you're stepping your foot forwards, you're coming back to rocking a bit. See this nice rocking from side to side. And again, just this sense that we're dropping down into our feet. Maybe our feet are feeling really big in the field of our awareness. And then settle your feet down. We're going to bend to the front knee. And we're going to come to lean forwards onto that front leg. But this time you're trying to let your spine flatten out rather than round. So your back leg is straight, your front knee's bent. We're coming into a twist here, which is why we want our spine to be long and straight rather than curving forwards. So you can bring your back leg hand onto the back of your pelvis. I'm resting my sort of front, my other hand on my bent front thigh. It could be your elbow there, and you're turning in the direction of your back leg. So you're turning away from your front leg. But you're trying to feel wide in the front of your chest. You can then release your bottom arm towards the floor. And you could bring your fingers to your ankle, your shin, or the floor. You could just let that arm hang. So Sheila, with your sort of lower back, it's better to have your fingers on somewhere than the arm hanging. And then your top arm can come up towards the ceiling. And you want to try and feel that your top arm is immediately above your bottom arm. And also that your top hand is sort of alive and soft and relaxed. Good. See if we have a cycle of breath here. Can you let your breath come in? Can you let your breath leave you? And then you can untwist from here. Untwist and flop forwards over your front leg. Let your head go. Let your arms go. And just maybe have a cycle of breath in that forward bend. Let the breath come in. Let the breath leave you. Then sink into your footprints. Come back up into standing. Have a little shake out. So I'm just turning around on my mat so I don't have to twist away from you, but you don't need to do that. You just need to come back to feet being side to side and then step your other foot forwards. And come back to rocking your weight forwards and back. So we're coming back to that intention of just really settling our feet down, feeling big feet, feeling steady below the waist. So I'm starting to bend. I've settled both feet now, down now. I've bent my front knee. I'm coming to this place where I'm leaning forwards. I'm resting. I'm keeping my weight very anchored in my feet, but I'm resting my hands or my elbow on my front leg thigh. I'm thinking about the spine lengthening out and flattening. The back leg hand can come onto the back of your pelvis. And so we're turning away from the front leg. Trying to keep wide in the front of the chest. So you don't, I say turn towards the back leg, but you don't want to look towards your back leg, otherwise you'll start to sort of close up through the front of your body. That's it. Release your bottom arm to the ground. So the fingers could rest on your ankle or your shin or the floor, or the arm could just hang and the top arm can come up. And then just try to feel that where is your top arm? Is it very nice? Is it immediately above your bottom arm? Fantastic. It's really beautiful. Can we have a cycle or two of breath here? Can we feel the breath come in? Can we feel the breath leave us? And perhaps again, let a breath come in. Let the breath leave. And then before we get too fixed here, untwist, flop forwards over your front leg. Have a breath or two there. And then you can sink into your heels, come back up into standing. Good. A little shake out. We're going to come to the backs of our mats and we're going to make our way down onto hands and knees, and we're going to do some more sort of twisty and lungy things here. So at the back of your mat, hands in prayer pose in front of your chest. Let a breath come in as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Feel lovely and long and tall, and then curving down into your forward bend. Just maybe a cycle of breath in your forward bend, and then walking your hands on into dog pose. And again, perhaps just a couple of cycles of breath in dog. Hopefully dog is starting to feel a little bit freer now. Perhaps after that standing twist, it's a relief to be in dog pose. And from dog pose, come down onto hands and knees. But we're then going to be, when we're on hands and knees, rather than staying on hands and knees, we're going to step one foot forwards. So we're coming into, not into a lunge yet, but into this, it's like a mini lunge when we're going to be twisting here. So my front knee is over my front heel. And remember, you've got this little sideways distance here, so you're not teetering around like you're on a tightrope. So front knee is over the front heel, the back knee's under the pelvis. And then this time we turn towards the front leg. And the opposite hand comes to rest on your front thigh. And try and give away your back arm. Yeah, can you sort of shake it out? And then you might rest your back hand on the back of your pelvis, or you might just let that arm hang. And then how does it feel? Can we be wide across the front of the chest here? And can we particularly let the back shoulder drop down? Oh, that's why it's quite good to keep shaking out that back arm. Lovely. And then from here, untwist. And we're going to go on into a lunge. So untwist, fold over your front leg. Tuck your back toe under and walk that leg back so you come on into a lunge. So we're coming to that feeling of opening out through the front of our back leg thigh. And we might want to, you can keep your back knee on the ground for the moment. We will be doing a lunge twist in a moment. Well, not just yet, but we will be coming on to that. But for now, just be in this sort of normal lunge, exhaling. Your toes can be tucked under or flat. If it's more comfortable to untuck your toes, do that. And whenever you want to, whenever you've had enough time in this lunge, you're going to ease out of it by rocking back. So that movement where we start to rock back. So you have to untuck your toes at this point, I think. My knee needs me to do that. I come onto the heel of my front foot and I'm looking back behind me. Good. And then back onto hands and knees, and we'll step the other foot forward. So we're going to do all of that on the other side. We're going to do that twist and that lunge on the other side. So you've stepped your other foot forwards. You've got your knee over your heel. And then in your back leg, you've got your knee under your pelvis. And then as we exhale, we turn towards this front leg. That's it. Trying to sort of, it's not always easy to be steady in this position, but interesting, I think that's it. That's nice for you. Just let your shoulders come back a little bit if you can. Good, good, very nice. Lovely. So again, we're giving away the back arm, trying to let the back shoulder be relaxed. The hand could come onto the back of your pelvis. Front hand could be resting on your front leg thigh. A couple of breaths here again, feeling wide through the front of the chest. And then in your own time, you can untwist and you can move on into lunge. So if you want a bit longer in the twist, you can do that. Or if you want a bit longer in the lunge, you can carry on into your lunge. That's it, having a few breaths in your lunge. So you've walked your back leg away. You're now feeling that stretch, that lengthening. What else can we say? That opening through your back leg thigh. I tend to, in this one, that's what our focus is. I would just look down at the ground, keep it soft and relaxed through the shoulders. And just really focusing on the weight of the pelvis dropping down. And yeah, whenever you've had enough, you can be easing back out of your lunge. So untucking your back toe. And then easing back, coming maybe onto the heel of your front foot. So in a moment, we're going to come on back into lunge and do a lunge twist. But first, I wanted us to do a little bit of plank pose, which I don't know, I feel like we haven't done so much of for a few weeks. So towards the front of your mat, organise yourself. We're going to do a couple of planks. You don't have to stay there a really long time. Organise yourself with your shoulders over your wrists. And then we see how it feels to lengthen one leg back behind us, tuck the toes under, add the other leg in. And then we're trying to feel ourselves in this long, straight line of plank. So we're not allowing our pelvis to sag down to the ground. And neither are we letting our pelvis stick up in the air like we do in dog. And then we're just noticing how it is to be here. Not particularly easy to breathe very fully. And yeah, when you're ready, you could come down. You could maybe sit back into kneeling or sit in up kneeling, give your hands a little shake out. And we'll do a second plank pose. You can give your hands a little shake out. You can bring the backs of your hands together, give your hands a little wiggle. Good. That's it. And then you can, in your own time, you can do a second plank pose. And in this plank, just really, I suppose thinking about how we're using the bones of our arms to help support us. So yes, there's some muscular activity going on, but we're really thinking about resting through the bones of our arms and finding this support. We can have another couple of breaths. And you're looking down at the floor, maybe slightly ahead of your fingertips. Let the breath come in, let the breath leave you. And then again, you can come down and you can sit back over your heels, give your hands a bit of a shake out. Well done. Good. So when we come into this lunge twist, we use one of the arms is very similar to plank pose. We plant that hand on the floor and we support ourselves partially through that arm, which is why I wanted us to do a bit of plank. So let's come back into lunge. So bring one foot forwards and then we'll walk, tuck our toes under, walk the other leg back. So organise yourself. You're going to have your front knee over your front heel. You're just coming into a normal lunge. And then the opposite hand, so the opposite hand to the front foot, that's the hand that's going to plant on the floor, a bit like in plank pose. Or if it's better for you, you can be on your fingertips or your knuckles. Or if your hand doesn't reach the floor, you can always put a book under it. Because then what we're doing is turning towards the front leg. And this is, there's not a lot of space there when we turn towards the front leg. It's not particularly easy. Our top hand can be on the back of our pelvis. And we're just trying to feel wide across the front of the chest. So you could stop at that point. And Sheila, just go easy. If you want to go further, you can stretch into your back heel and let the back knee come off the ground. So now we're leaning a bit more into that supporting arm. And then the top arm reaches up and over your head. So there's a long diagonal line from your back heel through to your fingertips. And you're just breathing yourself long through that diagonal. Good. Very nice. You don't have to stay there particularly long. You can, that's it, let your back knee come down. You can untwist, you can untuck your back toe, and you can just sort of ease back out of that like we did with the other lunge. And then we'll swap and do the other side. And again, I'm just going to turn around so I can watch you all. So your other foot's going to come forwards. You're going to establish yourself in a comfortable lunge with the other foot forwards and with your toes tucked under. And remember, it's your opposite hand to your front foot. That hand is sort of planting on the floor, a bit like plank. The other hand can come onto the back of our pelvis, and we're turning our ribs towards our front leg. There's not a lot of space there. Good. You could stop there, or you could go on letting the back knee come off the ground, reaching back behind you with your heel, and then arm comes up and over your head in the opposite direction. Good. That's nice. Just long, very nice. Good. Breath or two there. And of course you can untwist, untuck your back toe, ease back. And perhaps just quiet in a moment, either in kneeling or child pose. We're going to be going on, kneeling or child pose for a moment. We're just going to be coming up into standing, and we're going to be, doing quite a quiet standing balance. So when you just feel that you've quietened down, either in child pose or kneeling, we're going to come back onto hands and knees and stretch each leg out behind us. And then we're going to move up. We're going to move up into standing through tucking our toes under and walking our hands into our knees. So we're going more from a squat, or being on the balls of our feet, into a forward bend. And we're going to roll up into standing and then all the way into a little back arch. And then we'll come back down to this squat. So from being on the balls of your feet, you can start to send your heels down and your sit bones up. So you end up in a forward bend. And then touch the backs of your hands together and start to roll your upper body up into standing. And if you like, you could sort of go beyond standing into your little standing back arch. And it might be that you want to bring one arm down. You might want to remember to bend your knees, bring your hand onto your lower back, let your tailbone drop. Just perhaps a couple of times in your standing back arch. And then that's it. Let yourself go back down into your forward bend. Let your head go and back down into a squat. So it doesn't matter if your heels come up. Just let yourself go back down into a squat, which could be nice for lower backs. And then from this squat, we'll roll back up into standing. No standing back arch this time. And then we're going to come into a little balance. So sending your heels down, letting your head go, rolling up. You can touch the backs of your hands together if you like, rolling up into standing. So taking your arms up and wide. Good. So let's just settle in standing. So having a look at the feet. Do a little bit of, yeah, if you need to shake your legs, yes, I don't know, from coming those squats and forward bends, you might need to give your legs a shake out. But then we're going to be settling down and standing, a little bit of swaying from side to side, a little bit of getting a sense of which leg we're going to start by standing on. So that's it, just letting your weight rock to the right and to the left. So you're getting a sense of how does it feel to take your weight over one leg and foot? How does it feel to take your leg over the other leg and foot? And from this, just decide which leg you're going to stand on first. And you're going to take that arm up. So whichever leg you're going to stand on, take that arm up towards the ceiling. And we're going to shift our weight into our standing leg, and we're going to be catching the top of our other foot. And then we can bring our raised arm down, so our hand comes onto our breastbone, and you could just stay here in this sort of quiet balance with the hand on the breastbone. But if you think you can move quietly so that you could go on by reaching your arm forwards and taking your foot back away from your bottom. So see if you can come to a quiet place there. You could stay there, or you could come back, gather back so your hand comes onto your breastbone. And you come back upright. That's nice. Good. Very nice. Lovely. And whenever you've been balancing on that one foot for long enough, come down and give your feet a little shake out. Good. And let's just, before we do the other side, let's settle in standing for a moment. And again, just, yes, Sheila, you don't have to be completely still. You can be swaying a bit. But just see if you can settle in standing, really feel your feet on the floor. So our intention in this standing balance is to sort of quieten and settle. So you can start to think about bringing your weight onto your second foot, taking that arm up towards the ceiling. And just all the time we have this intention to be sort of, quiet. We're easing the foot off the floor that we just stood on. We're catching the top of that foot. We're bringing our hand to our breastbone, and you could stay here, or you could see how it is to be here. If you wanted to see how it is to reach forwards with the hand that's on the breastbone, bring your foot back away from your bottom, you could do. And you could, can you have a quiet breath or two there? And then equally, can you come back to that place where you're coming a bit more upright, your hand comes back to your breastbone, you let your knee drop, good. Very nice. And then yes, coming out, shake out. Let's come back. We're just going to come back to this swinging twist, what we did right at the beginning of class, and then just a little bit of breathing. So say breathing in standing. Actually, I might give you a choice, but let's just do a little bit more swinging of the arms. Okay. So a couple more times, swing your arms from side to side. In a moment, we're going to lie down and do a couple of twisty things. I want us just to do a little bit of breathing, and you could choose now. I think I was going to say do it in standing, but Sheila, I think you should probably lie down, and anyone else who would prefer to lie than stand. We're not going to do very much, so just decide at this point whether you would prefer to lie or stand. And we're just very simply going to bring our hands onto the front of our body. So it could be one hand on the belly, one hand on the chest. Could be both hands on the belly. Could be hands on the low ribs with the thumbs going round towards the back of the body. And so just wherever you are, if you're standing like me, you might be sort of swaying a little bit. If you're sitting, Rosie, you could be just doing, you might find you want to rock, or you might just be quite happy for sitting still. And then gathering your attention into your breathing, seeing if you can feel your body responding to your breath. So it might be a sort of movement of the belly or the chest or the ribs. Or it might be just that you feel the flow of your breath somewhere inside of you. Let's see if we can keep our attention with our breathing for 3 cycles of breath. So letting the breath come in, letting the breath leave. So make this your last cycle of breath if you're standing or sitting, and then come to lie down. And if you're lying down, obviously just stay there. And come to settle yourselves on your backs. And we're going to do a floor twist in a moment, and I'll talk you into this. So if you're lying there already, you could just do a little bit of letting your head roll from side to side. So easing your neck. And also, if you bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor, you could do a little bit of letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And then I'll talk you into, because for a long time I wasn't really enjoying these floor twists, but then I found this way that really makes them so much better. And I don't know whether that's just, things change in our body from time to time. So from tilting your knees, you're going to fold your knees into your chest. But before we go on to the twist, once you've folded your knees into your chest, you can do a little bit of rocking if you like. But then what I'd like you to do is take your legs up to the ceiling and give them a shake out. And I just find if I do this before my floor twist, it seems to make it a huge amount more comfortable, and I don't really know why. So you've given your legs a shake out, then fold your knees back in towards your chest, and you can wrap one arm around the back of your thighs or support your legs with one arm, and the other arm out on the floor at shoulder height. Now it might be, I should have said this earlier, it might be because we're going to be taking our knees down towards the floor in the opposite direction to the arm that's on the floor. You might need to cushion some of you under your knees. And Sheila, just sort of see how, yes, that's it. I'm thinking you might want to cushion with your back. But what I've been doing in this is just keeping my arm under my legs, and that often can work really well. So just how does it feel? You keep your shoulder down, you take your knees down to the other side. You can carry on supporting your legs with your arm. Or if it's more comfortable, you can take your arm out from under. So the shoulder needs to stay nice and settled on the ground. And once you're down in your twist, you could have a couple of big sighing breaths, or just settle with your natural breath. And see how it feels, because I think, sometimes I do this and I feel that I don't want to stay and I can't really settle. And if that's the case, then just come back to the center. And if you are settled there, then have another breath or 2 or 3, and then we'll come back to the center and swap sides. So when you come back to the center, before you do the other side, take your legs up to the ceiling again. So yeah, and then when I do this, I almost start to bring my arm around the back of my legs when they're still up in the air. So there's this sense of really sort of folding the legs close in towards my chest. And then obviously we've swapped our arms over, the other arm is on the floor, and we're moving the legs down in the opposite direction. So we've got our shoulder settled on the floor, the legs are going the other way, we're using a cushion if we need to. We can keep our arm under our legs, or we can remove it. We can use a big sighing breath, or we can just settle with our quiet breath. And again, on this side, if you don't find you're settled, then you don't have to stay there. One other thing is sometimes we want the cushion in between our knees. So that's it. And just this feeling of giving our shoulder to the ground, giving our legs to the ground, letting our breath move through us. And when you've had another couple of breaths or so, we'll come back to the center and you can always take your legs up to the ceiling again if you like, and then we'll just settle quietly with our breath for a minute or two. That's nice. So yeah, I'm just going to settle quietly now. We're not doing anything else. We're just letting our bodies rest. If you need a blanket, of course, pop something on, something warmer. So just really letting the weight of your body settle on the ground. And feeling the flow of your breath move through you. And just enjoying this chance to be quiet and settled. You can be aware of the ground supporting your body, the points of your body in contact with the ground. Be aware of the air on your skin, the light, sounds. So in a moment, I'm going to ring the singing bowl, but you're very welcome to carry on lying down if you have the time. So thank you, everyone. Thank you. I hope you get a chance to enjoy the sunshine today. It really is so lovely.